Bava Metzia daf pedal amud bet. So we are in the middle of the Agadata of Bava Metzia, which talks about all the Gedolei Amoraim. We spent the last 2 weeks talking about Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon. This week, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll be transitioning to Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, and we'll be learning some stories. What I want to do this week is basically to learn the Gemara in Bava Metzia about Rabbi, and then one section of it, look at two parallel tellings of that same story about Rabbi in different places. So you have here in the Talmud Bavli, in Bava Metzia, and then we'll also learn a version of it in Breshit Rabbah, and we'll learn a version of it in the Yerushalmi. And we'll try to offer some chidushim on if there's something we can try to understand both about the nuanced differences between the tellings of the stories, and then also maybe some aspects of the stories that we can try to kind of weave a common thread between. So usually we bring mefarshim and we bring achronim. This week there aren't achronim as much as just some of our kind of own original ideas. There are two makorot that after I printed this I thought to add, which you don't have, but I do have written here. So I will read those, and you are more than welcome to listen intently and try to follow along if I read it, but not read along. And that's that. So with that, we'll get started. Okay, so the Gemara in Bava Metzia on Daf Pei Dalet Amud Bet says as follows. Shalach Rabbi ledaber b'ishto. So what's the connection between this and Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon? If you remember, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, when he died, so his wife put him in the attic for anywhere between 18 to 22 years, and then he had a worm coming out of his ear, and there was a whole story there, but he was dead. So Rabbi sent ledaber b'ishto. In other words, he proposed marriage to the widow of Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon. Shalcha alei klish nishtamesh bo kodesh ishtamesh bo chol. Right? Should a vessel that was used for such kedusha as Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon now be used for such mundane activities as you? What?
The widow?
Yeah. The widow. This is her response to Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, who was the Gadol Ador. Yes. So, what? Taman Amrin, and there in Bavel, they had a different way of phrasing this. Ba'atar demare veta tla zaine kul baraya kul tetla. So in the place where the master of the house hangs his weapon, should the dog-like shepherd put his basket? In other words, right, you're out of your league, kid. Shlachla, he sent back to her, Nihi de betorah gadol mimeni, aval b'masim tovim mi gadol mimeni. So Rabbi says back, okay, maybe I'll grant you that your late husband was greater than me in Torah, but who's greater than me in ma'asim tovim? Shlachale, she sent back to him, but Torah mi hagadol mimcha lo yadan. She says, I didn't know he was greater than you in Torah. B'ma'asim yadana, but what you say that you're greater in ma'asim, I know that he's actually greater than you in ma'asim.
This is dating.
This is all through shalich, right? You imagine that.
Mind the conversation.
The shaliach is going back and forth, conveying these messages. It kind of reminds Inyan Dioma, right? With Perek Dalet of Megillat Esther, right? That no, with Hatach and Mordechai and Esther, right? That right. Vatomer Esther, Lashiv al Mordechai, and then Mordechai, Vatishlach Esther.
And they do talk to each other.
In the end, they speak face to face. Yes. So she says, when it comes to deeds, though, I know he's greater than you. Actually, because he accepted Yisurin upon himself, and we should all be familiar with what that means. Okay, from last week. So then the Gemara asks, the Torah Maihi. So what does it mean when we say that Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon was greater in Torah than Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi? So when the previous generation, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, who was Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi's father, and Rabbi Shua ben Korcha were sitting on benches, Yatve Kamay, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Ya'ara. So their students, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi, who were peers, sat on the floor in front of them because they sat on the floor because they were the younger generation. Makshu u'mefarku. And Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi would ask questions and answer questions. Oh, they were very sharp. They were following along in the shir. So Amrei. So then Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Shimon ben Karcha said, we're drinking from their waters and they're sitting on the floor in front of us. They should be our equals. So avadalu asafsale askinu. So they made benches for them and lifted them up. Amar la Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So then Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi's father said, Pereda achat yesh li benechem ve'atem mevakshim la'abdah himeni. I have one fledgling, and you are seeking to take him away from me. So Rashi says this means ayin hara, that if Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was raised up to the level of the generation above him, so then that's not good, because that leads to people being jealous of him and this and that, and that could be something that could lead to something dangerous. So achtu al Rabbi, so they put him back down. Amar la Rabbi Shimon ben Karcha. So Rabbi Shimon ben Karcha said, Mi sheyesh lo av yichyeh, u'mi she'en lo av yamut. In other words, Rabbi Shimon's father wasn't there, because Rabbi Shimon ben Karcha had died already. So Rabbi Shimon ben Karcha says, why now should Rabbi Shimon be the only one who's on the bench who shouldn't be? And then he attracts all the ayin hara, and then he ends up getting punished. Now that Rabbi's been brought back down. So they lowered him back down as well. Chalash da'ateh. So then Rabbi Shimon got insulted. Amar kach hashvitu le'kavoti. You're telling me that I'm on the same level as Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi? That was Rabbi Shimon's response. Okay, so from here we know that Rabbi Shimon was greater than Rabbi in Torah. Okay? Adahu yoma ki hava amar Rabbi Milta, hava Messiah Rabbi Shimon. So up to that point, whenever Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi and Shiur would mention some point of Torah, so Rabbi Shimon would bring a support for him. Say, oh, that's a great, chiddush, this is why that makes sense. Mikan va'elach ki hava amar Rabbi yesh li lashiv. But from that point on, whenever Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi said, no, I have some chiddush to do. So Amar le Rabbi Shimon, kach v'chach yesh lecha lashiv. The thing that you want to be mechadesh, this is what you want to be mechadesh. Zoi tshuvata, this is why it's a bad chiddush. Hashta hi kaftanu tshuvot chavilot she'en b'mamash. Don't waste our time by sending us through this whole back and forth that has no substance. Okay? Chalash dated the Rebbe. So then Rebbe got insulted because he saw Rabbi Shimon was starting to put him down in the shiur. So Ata Amar Le'Lavua. So he went and he told his father, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So Amar Le, his father said, Bini Ali Ralach, don't worry about it. Shehu Ari ben Ari ve'ata Ari ben Shual. Because Rabbi ben Shimon is a lion, the son of a lion. He's Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. But you are a lion, the son of a fox, namely me. I am your father, and I am a fox, which is less chashuv than a lion. So don't be insulted. Okay? V'hainu da'amar Rabbi. So Rabbi he was comforted by that, and he took a lesson from that, and he said, Shlosha in v'natanin hen. There were 3 people who were humble. Ve'elu hen, Abba, my father, ubnei v'tera, v'Yonatan ben Shaul. Okay? Rabbi Shimon had Amaran. So his father, we just learned why, because he called himself a fox. Bnei B'tera, de'amar maro shivu barosh minu l'nasi alehen. Okay, I brought the story of Bnei B'tera in the next source. It's a Gemara in Pesachim. I'll leave it for the end if we have time, just to go back and learn it. But suffice to say, there's a story about the Bnei B'tera that they appointed Hillel to be the Nasi, and they lowered themselves from being in charge. So that was a sign of their humility. And Yonatan ben Shaul, the Kamar Leila David, right? Yonatan says to David, Yonatan was the son of Shaul, he said to David, in other words, they were friends, and Yonatan said to David, I'll be second to you, I'll let you be the king. So the Gemara asks me, who says that means that they were humble? So Dilma Yonatan ben Shaul, the Chaza Degrir Ama Batar David. Maybe Yonatan wasn't saying that from a place of humility, he was saying it from a place of, he just saw the political winds and the tides were turning. David was very popular. He was having this kind of populist uprising. And he saw that his own father, Shaul, was losing support. So he hitched his bandwagon to the popular. It doesn't mean that he was humble. The Gemara then continues, B'nei B'tera nami dechazo lehillel de'adif minayu. And maybe the B'nei B'tera, I know we didn't learn the story, but maybe they just saw that Hillel was greater than them. It wasn't that they were humble. They just realized that he was much wiser than them. So they recognized that. But the Gemara says, but the story about Rabbi Shimon Gamliel calling himself a fox, there's no way to interpret it other than to say that he was actually humble.
It's interesting. The Gemara doesn't ask the question for an answer. It asks the question to bring out the point that he's an unknown for sure. There's no way to question it.
Right.
It's an interesting thing.
It's interesting because I would have thought that would be the one, to me, that's the most obvious that's not humility. Because why is he saying that? To comfort his son who's upset. Does he really mean it? He's saying it because he knows that's what his son needs to hear. But okay, beseder. Very nice. Okay, and this is the story. These were two kind of introductions about Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, and then this is the story we're going to focus on, this third section. Amar Rabbi, Chaviv and Yisurin. So Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi said, Yisurin are a good thing. And we talked about in the previous shiurim that Rashi said this is because he looked back and saw what happened to Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon, that he didn't rot. His engines didn't rot. And then remember we had that whole question in the Rif about the order of the stories. Okay, this is what it's talking about. So Kabbalah Tleisar Shnei. So then Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi accepted upon himself 13 years of Yisurin. Sheit b'tzmirta u'shva b'tzafdina, which I think means 6 years of kidney stones and 7 years of scurvy. The Amri la shiva b'tzmirta v'sheit b'tzafrina. And there's some say it was 6 of scurvy and 7 of kidney stones. Then the Gemara continues. Ayu ho'yarei devei Rabbi hava atir mishavur malka. The stable, so Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was the Nasi. He was very wealthy. And we hear other stories about how he had this table with all these foods and there was never food lacking. He was very wealthy. The stableman of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was richer than Shvur Malka. Shvur Malka was King Shapur. He was the king of the Persian Empire. So the stableman of Rabbi was richer than the emperor of the greatest empire at the time. He was saying he knew he had a lot. Why does that matter? Kad hava rami kista l'chevata. So when the stableman would put fodder or food for the animals, hava azil kala b'tlata mile. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi had so many animals because he was so wealthy that whenever the food was put out in front of them, the voice of them kind of mooing and neighing for the food carried for 3 mil. Hey, a mil is roughly a kilometer, 2,000 amot. So that's how many animals he had. And this stableman used to try to feed the animals at the time that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi had to go to the bathroom. But it wasn't enough. What this means is Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi's screams of pain from when he went to the bathroom because of the afflictions that he had it was so painful that he screamed so loud that the animals wasn't able to drown out his screams, and his screams carried all the way to Nachoteyama, to the sea. The sea being referenced here, we'll talk about later, actually, because that's one of the chidushim I want to bring, or one of the ideas I want to suggest. Okay, how far is the sea? But it's farther than 3 mil. That's clear.
Okay. Weren't the people that healed Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon last year?
Is that what they were called?
People,
the sailors?
I think so.
It's sailors, yeah.
Then
They brought him the 60 things.
Guzman.
Yeah. Yeah, those were sailors as well. You're saying it's saying that those same sailors are the ones that heard his screams? Maybe. Okay, interesting. I hadn't made that connection. Very good.
But it sounds like they're saying his Yisurim were more stronger than, like more serious than all he had. Bava Metzia. It was noise.
Good. Well, good. We'll get to that. Yeah.
He didn't leave on the. He didn't leave like in the avenue or something.
Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. Good. Where did he live? We're going to get to this.
Yeah, everybody, I mean, they were in Yerushalayim, no?
No. Well, we'll see. The Midrash talks about it soon. All right. We'll spoiler it. He lived in Tzipori.
Yeah.
Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi.
That's a fun.
And so the sea being referred to here is the Kinneret. And the Tzipori, it overlooks the Kinneret. And I looked on Google. I was going to say it then. I looked on Google Maps. The distance from Tzipori to the Kinneret is around 30 kilometers. It's around 30 mil instead of 3. So it's a distance of roughly 10 times. And I want to suggest something at the end about that. Okay. But, so to say, like, his voice was so loud that the animals only carried 3 kilometers. His voice was screaming out. It went from Tzipori all the way to the Kinneret. So it shows you how, of course, the point here is Guzman, that he was in a lot of pain. That's the idea, okay? But despite how painful this was, Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon's Yisurin, which we talked about already, are preferred to what Rebbe had. Why? That he accepted those Yisurin upon himself, right? Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon out of love, in order to cleanse himself. But Rebbe was punished with Yisurin, and eventually the Yisurin left because he did something good. So what were those things? This is the key to what we're going to discuss. Dehahu igla, dehavuka mamtu le l'shchita. One time there was a calf that was being led to be shechted. Azal talie l'reishe bechanfe de Rebbe v'kavache. As the calf was being led to be shechted, it passed by Rebbe, and the calf put its head up into the cloak of Rebbe and cried. Because the calf knew, it had an instinct of what was happening to it. Amar le, Rebbe said to the calf, Zil l'chach notzarta. Go, this is your purpose in creation, to be shechted. Amre, they said, Rashi says barakia, Hoil velo ka merachem leto ale yisurin. Because you, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, did not have mercy on this calf, you deserve to be afflicted with 13 years of painful scurvy and kidney stones. And eventually that affliction left because of something that happened. Yom achad havaka kansha amte de Rebbe beta. One day, the maidservant of Rebbe was was cleaning the house. Havashadya bnei karkushta v'ka kansha lahu. And then she sent out, there were these weasels that were walking around, and she tried to beat them out with the broom. And Rebbe said, Shivkinu, leave the weasels alone. Why? Ktiv v'rachamav v'kol ma'asav. Right? Hashem's mercy extends to all his creations, even to the weasels. So Amaru, again, barakia, ho'elu merachem, since he had mercy on the weasels, nerachem alei. And so the affliction stopped. Okay? So this story in and of itself is an amazing story. It's fascinating, right? That to have mercy on the cat. Okay, but what I want to do is analyze the connection, or like I said before, the similarities and the differences between this telling and other tellings. So if we go to the next source in Bereshit Rabbah, Perek Lamed Gimel, Mishnah Gimel. Okay, I'm going to ask afterwards, a quiz, the differences that you guys see. So pay close attention. Yeah, like a test, right? Rabbeinu havayatev le'ei be'oraita kamiknishta de bavlai b'tziporin. Okay, so here we see that he lived in Tzipori. So Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was sitting and learning Torah in the Beit Knesset of the Babylonians in Tzipori. Avar chad egel kodamoy, a calf passed by him. Azel lemit nechasa v'shari gai kememar shezivni. And as it was being taken to be shechted, it bellowed as if it were saying, "Save me." Amar le, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi said to the calf, "Umani achol lemei badlach? What can I do for you? L'chach notzarta. This is why you were created." V'chashash Rebbe et shinav 13 shana. So as a punishment for that, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi had a tooth ailment or toothaches for 13 years. Toothaches. His teeth hurt him.
Right.
That's what we're learning.
Too much cookies.
Right, he ate too many wafers. Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Avin. Kol otan 13 shana shaya choshesh Rabbi et shinav lo ipila ubara be'eretz Yisrael v'lo nitztaru hayoldot. For those 13 years that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi had a toothache, there were no miscarriages and there was no pain in childbirth. Why do you think? What point is it making here? Why do you think that is? Who cares?
Gadol Ador is Surin for everybody else.
Good, right? The Surin of the Gadol Ador atones for the generation. Batar yomin avar chad sheretz kamei berate uva'al miktala. One day, 13 years later, a sheretz, a bug, went in front of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi's daughter, and she wanted to squash it. Ew, it's a juke. Amar la, he said to her, Brati shafkei, leave the juke. Tichtiv rachamav al kol masav. Hashem's mercy extends to all his creations.
That's not what Mama was.
My mom.
That's, yeah. Well, no, it's your mom would want to squash the juke. I would need to say to your ima, leave the juke alone. But there's also rachamav al kol masav to me.
That's the least favorite animal. That's the least favorite animal. The juke.
The juke, yeah. Okay.
That's probably one of my favorite ones.
Also, I need to be protected in these situations. Okay. Rabbeinu hava anvetan
I
sageh.
think Mama should hear this.
I will tell her. We'll see what she says. Or you tell her. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was exceedingly humble. V'hava amar, he used to say, Kol ma diyomar li barnash ana avid. I'll do whatever anyone tells me to do. Chutz mima she'asu b'nei v'tera lizkeni. Other than what the b'nei v'tera did to my ancestor, Hillel, because Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was a descendant of Hillel Zaken, she'adu migdulatan ve'elu oto. Okay? That they, stepped down from their position of authority and they appointed Hillel instead. Okay, so first of all, just before I ask what the differences are, so here Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was exceedingly humble. So why wasn't he on his own list of the humble people, where he said his father and Rabbi Yehuda, because he himself was exceedingly humble. Okay, what are the differences between this and the story the version we saw in Bava Metzia?
It wasn't a rodent, it was a juke.
Okay. It wasn't a weasel, it was a Jew.
Yeah, it was
Doesn't matter
Teeth
what
pain
it
instead
was.
of other stuff.
He was punished with teeth pain
Thing
instead
for
of
13 years.
right. It was teeth pain for 13 years instead of scurvy and kidney stones for
I
6
saw
and
the
7.
calf didn't go.
What's
They
it the
didn't say
same
just said a
about
calf.
him?
They didn't say what was.
He didn't say
No, it
cry.
wasn't.
Hey, Kadomoy,
Right. He didn't cry, he bellowed.
No, but
And also the response. I mean,
Kadomoy.
what do you want me to do?
Right. Good. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, instead of just saying "L'chach notzarta," he says, "What can I? What? Go. This is what he says. He says, "Ma ani yachol lemevad lach." What can I do for you?
Meaning he wanted to, but like, what am I supposed to do? That's what you're here for. Versus, go.
Right. Good. Yes. We'll talk about that. Anything else?
Also here it says לא הפילה הוא ברא בארץ ישראל ולא נצטרר.
Right.
I mean, here it's a whole different thing.
Nachon.
It's his daughter instead of his maid.
Yeah, the daughter instead of the maid. Good. So you see, it's the exact same story, but almost
maybe
every detail
It's different.
is different, right? It's like you change every detail while still keeping the core the same, right?
It's like the Chassidish stories that are said over in the name of different rabbis. Different Chassidim.
I guess.
It's the same
But
story.
about the rabbi in the jail or something?
All of them.
All of them. Good. I'll add one more, and then I'll talk about my thoughts on these differences. In the very, very beginning, that here, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, this happens when he's learning Torah in the shul. Versus in Bava Metzia, just it doesn't say what he's doing. A cow's just walking by. Okay? And okay, so let's go through these one on one. Okay, so let's start the beginning. What was Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi doing? So I just said, in Bava Metzia, it doesn't seem that he's doing anything specific, but here he's sitting in the shul and he's learning. Okay, now, which of those is more of an indictment on Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi's behavior? Which of those is more unforgivable, as it were, that he would be punished? That if a cow he's walking through the shuk and a cow comes and does this, or that he's learning Torah and a cow comes and does this? So I'll tell you what I thought, which is there's this story, I think it's told in the name of Rav Ami tells it from Gush, but it's one of these maisas that also I think it's told the baby, right? You have some guy, what's this? The baby is you have a guy who's learning Torah, and there's a baby crying. Oh, 2 guys.
No, the story is about, as you say, about the Rebbes.
It's about the Alter Rebbe?
About the Alter Rebbe.
So this is
So in Yeshiva it said about Rav Soloveitchik.
This is exactly what you said, right? That's exactly it.
They said that he was learning Torah, and there was another guy learning Torah, and there was a baby crying. And then Rav Soloveitchik just stopped learning and took care of the baby, and
the other guy didn't hear it.
The Alter Rebbe stopped. Anyway.
it's the same person.
The version I heard of this is that the story is if the way you're learning Torah means that you're deaf to the cries of a baby, you're not doing it right. Okay, that's the message, right? And I would argue that's exactly this. Like the Alter Rebbe, it's Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, right? That if he can't remove himself, or if his Torah learning is blinding him to the empathy required for this calf coming and crying for its life to him, then he's missing the point, right? So that's the idea of maybe that this chidush in Bereshit Rabbah is adding an added layer of what he didn't have enough rachamim in this case. I would also add, right? We've learned this together. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, right? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai kibel mihillel v'shamai. Hu haya omer. This is one of the sayings in Pirkei Avot. Im lamadet Torah harbeh, al tachzik tova la'atzmacha ki lechach notzarta. Right? If you learn a lot of Torah, so don't think that's anything too special, because that's why you were created. You were created to learn Torah. So I would argue, right? Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi is sitting and learning Torah, which is l'chach notzarta. In other words, his purpose in the world is to learn Torah. L'chach notzarta. The calf comes and cries. He says, "Go l'chach notzarta." In other words, I'm fulfilling my purpose of sitting and learning, so you go fulfill your purpose, which is to be shechted. Right? So it's like a... but again, he's missing the point. Okay, the second thing I wanted to say, in Bava Metzia, the calf is crying, or whimpering more. And here is ga'e lememar shezivni. It's like the calf is freaking out. So in which of those is it worse or more unforgivable? In this one as well, right? I would say in Beis Yirah, but the calf is hysterical, is losing that. So the fact that he has the ability to kind of coldly say, to be deaf to the calf's cries is, okay, fine.
He's a little bit less cold in this one than the last one. The other one, he just says, go, this is...
So good, so that's what Dov Moshe said, and that's what I'm about to say. I want to argue the exact opposite of what you guys are suggesting.
Because here he says, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
That's less cold in your...
So I'm going to suggest why. Because on the surface, you would say exactly what you're saying, Shimon. That seemed he's. What can I do? Right?
Why did you do all these things?
To make notes on stuff that I didn't write. So why would I say that that's less? I'll explain why now. We learned a shir at the beginning of the year about Ammon and Moab. We actually referenced it a couple weeks ago. But the context, the first Gemara we learned there was Bava Kama Daf Lamed Chet Amud Aleph. I didn't bring it here, but it says Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda Shchivle Barta, that someone's daughter died. Amrle Rabbanan Leula Kum Nizil Nechame. Let's go do Nichum Avelin. Right? Amr Leula said to them, My itli gabei nechemta de bavlai de gidufahu. I have no interest in joining you to be Menachem Avelim if you're from Bavel because it's blasphemy. Why is it blasphemy? The Amre, because the Babylonians, what do they say when they go pay a Shiva visit? They say, Ma'ef Sharle Me'avad. What can you do? People die. Right? But he says, but why is that bad Nichum Avelim? Because Ha'ef Sharle Me'avad Avde. Because it implies if there was something we could have done, we would do it. But it's disingenuous because you wouldn't have done something. Like if you're saying, if I could have given my own life and saved his life, I would have. No, you wouldn't. You're just saying that. It's an empty consolation. So so Ula went and he gave his own nechama, and his nechama was about Ammon and Moab. So I want to take that concept and apply it here. When Rebbe says, Umani achol emevad lach nechach nocharta, on the surface, it seems to be empathetic. But I want to argue that it's the type of empathy of like, oh, if only there was something that I could do, just let me know if I can help. But you actually have no interest in actually helping. And in the end, that is worse than just being blunt and saying, I'm not interested. That I want to argue that. Because I think that wants to be consistent then.
The fake...
It's phony. It's like saying... Yeah, I mean, it's like at a Shiva visit, or if, this happens all the time, if people are, people are going through something, exactly, let me know if you need anything, I'll do it, but you don't want to help, right? It's empty, versus a genuine desire for help. So that's how I want to interpret Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi here. What can I do, poor calf? You have to be slaughtered, that is worse than just saying zil. As cold as zil sounds, but at least the calf has no false hope in someone coming to help him. So I'm trying to argue that so that this stays consistent with this always being a bit more of a dig, but I agree, Pshat is like what you guys said, that this might be a little more empathetic, okay? And then the final thing I want to say on this, and then, okay, we might have to go late today, because I have a lot to say. The last thing is, on this is we said that it's 13 years of a toothache versus 6 and 7 years of things relating to his intestinal stuff. So, perhaps, when he says zil chach notzarta, so that's a sin of compassion, right? And it says that the Gemara in Bava Metzia, it says he wasn't compassionate enough, so we're going to give him yisurin. Which is a sin of like your gut, your instinct. You're not able to kind of stir up compassion for the calf. So he was punished with afflictions that had to do with this area of his body. Here he's punished with a toothache. Because what I'm arguing now is his sin was about using his words in a phony way, like artificial consolation. And it wasn't that he didn't understand that there was a need for compassion, but his compassion was artificial, and that's a sin of the mouth. So therefore he had a toothache instead of an intestinal thing. Okay, so that's what I wanted to suggest. Okay.
But there's a big difference between the calf and the bug and the juke. Because the calf is basically saying, you were made of to go to shchita. But the juke, his daughter was trying to get the juke. So he was trying to say, he wasn't created to be killed by my daughter. וזה למה רחם על כל מעשיו, because he's just being exiled just for nothing. But maybe when it's shchita, he was trying to say there's a reason.
Right.
So
Okay.
Why is it? Why was?
What you're asking is when Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi says l'chach notzarta, he's right. That's what you're asking. It's true.
Yeah,
that
like,
is.
Because I'm saying
he's
he
not
knew the
doing
pasuk v'racham al kol maasav already. There's nothing.
Right.
He already knew it. So why didn't he say anything then?
That's a good question.
Or maybe it was maybe the Chelwa was too much into his Talmud that he didn't care about anything. It's like.
Yeah, I think it's saying even if he was technically correct that the calf was supposed to, he was too. You have to be a rachaman. That has to be your, the way you approach, other people, or even other animals suffering. Huh? Okay, I don't know. Okay. All right. The Gemara in Ketuvot on Daf Kuf Dalad Amud Aleph. Maybe this is familiar to some of us.
תגיד לי פשוט, מה הבעיה?
מה?
תגיד את זה אתה.
מי שלמד תורה, פטור מלעשות צבא.
לא צבא, באופן כללי כל דבר. לשלם מיסים, צבא, לחנות במקום הנכון.
Okay.
הכל.
Okay. The Gemara Ketuvot on Daf Kuf Dalad Amud Aleph tells the story of when Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi died. Okay. Hahu yom adenach nafshed Rabbi. So when Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi died, Gazru Rabbanan Ta'anita. They established a fast. Uval Rachamen, they davened for him. Ve'amre, kol man da'amar nach nafshed Rabbi, yidaker b'cherev. Anyone who says that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi has passed away will be killed with the sword. In other words, chas v'chalila, we're not letting him go. Slika amte de Rabbi li'igara. So the maid of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi goes up to the roof. Amra, elyonim mevakshim et Rabbi, v'tachtonim mevakshim et Rabbi. She says both the upper world wants him and the lower world wants him. Right? May it be Hashem's will that the lower world overcomes the upper world and that he doesn't die. Okay? Kevan de Chazai, Kama Zimni de Ailevet Akise, Vechalatz Tfilin Umanachlu Vekamitzta'ar. But then she saw that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi had to constantly go to the bathroom because he had a lot of afflictions. And that it was very painful for him. And each time he had to take off his tefillin, he felt the need to add that detail. But he was very distressed. So what does she say? She said, let the upper worlds overcome the lower worlds. But all the rabbis were davening for him. So he couldn't pass away. So what did the maidservant do? Have you guys heard this story before? This is a famous story. Or it's an important story. Shakla kuza, she took like a jug. Shadye me'igar la'ara, she threw it from the roof onto the ground. Ishtiku mirachame, the rabbis were startled into silence. V'nach nafshed Rabbi, and Rabbi passed away. Okay?
Wait, what?
Sounds like David HaMelech in
Right, with the angel, with the ladder.
Jeez, yeah. The ladder.
But the reason.
Somebody was knocking on the door, so he wouldn't.
Oh, okay, it's the door? I heard his ladder. The reason this is such an important story is it's a question of, like when are you allowed to pull the plug, essentially. If you have someone who's really, really, really suffering, so we have here a source where this maidservant does something to... The default opinion is to say, daven, no matter what, but he's in so much pain that she recognizes that the time has come. And she takes action, proactive action to... So that's a whole kind of another topic, but this is kind of interesting in that sense, okay? So the rabbis then, when they realized what happened, they said to Bar Kapara, Zil Ayin, go check on Rebbe. When he saw he was dead. So he did Kriya, and he turned the tear around to his back so they wouldn't see the tear. He went back to them and then he said, the angels and the righteous ones are struggling over the Aron. But the angels have defeated the righteous ones, right? Which is a metaphor. Aron Kodesh, right? And the ark has been taken. So Amruleh, they said to him, Nach nafshe, are you saying... Right, are you saying what we think you're saying? So Amar lehu, atun kamarito, vano lo kamena. You said it, not me, right? but why is he saying that? Because they said earlier, whoever says Rebbe died will be the kumizah. So he's saying... he gives this whole...
I can tell you it's not alive anymore.
You said it, not me,
so
right?
You said that, I didn't say that.
Right, okay, good.
If you needed a good hint for a Shabbos guy, go to him.
Exactly. Okay. All right. Bishat ptirato shel Rabbi zakaf eser etzbeotav klape mala. When he was about to die, he lifted up his 10 fingers to the sky. Amar, and he said, Ribono shel olam, Hashem, galui v'yadu lefanecha she'agati be'eser etzbeotai b'Torah. I worked with my 10 fingers for Torah. V'lo eneneeti afilu be'etzba ktana. Even my little finger never got any worldly benefit. May I rest in peace. He shall indeed rest in peace. Right? This is especially meaningful because, as we said before, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi had a ton of wealth. He was incredibly wealthy, but he's testifying about himself that he never got any benefit from this world that wasn't for the sake of Torah or what was needed. Okay? Why am I bringing this? Because now I want to bring a third version of the midrash we saw before, and then tie it back to this Gemara.
But that means that he didn't do anything to stop the Isurim that he had.
Oh, good. So what's the problem?
He just died with that.
Tefillah, yeah.
No, it says he had Isurim and just passed away. He didn't do any maaseh he didn't do anything to get rid of it.
Well, what's the problem though? You're touching on the issue here. What's the issue?
He had 13 years that he was suffering and 13 years that he wasn't.
Well, almost. It says 13 years that he was suffering, and then it stopped. Because of the bug or the weasels. But here, on the day of his death, he's suffering. So how does that make sense?
Well,
right?
After he passed away, he stopped.
No, he's suffering on the day of his death in this story.
After.
What?
Not the day after.
So you're saying the 13 years ended, the day of his death is when he told his daughter not to kill the Juk. That's what you're saying. And you align those two.
It could be
No, it could be a way to understand it, is that you align them by saying the day he died is the day that he told his daughter the Juk, and that's why the suffering stopped. And that would mean actually the suffering stopped, not because the fact that he said, Rachamavu kol masav, he learned his lesson with the Juk, but because he passed away. That's why the suffering stopped. Right?
No, okay, fine.
I hear what you're saying. I want to offer two other possibilities.
Or maybe he was able to pass away for the suffering to stop because he had Rachamim on the Juk.
Like put the stories together.
What's the word? He completed, it wasn't the Bava. Yeah, it was tikkun and then he was able to die.
It was a tikkun and then he was able to die. Okay, so you're combining them. You're saying he told his daughter the thing, and here it's saying, and then he was able to yanuchu and then the Yehi Shalom b'Minchati, because I finally got kapara. And that ties back to Rabbi Shimon, who also wanted to see in his death that his afflictions had been mechaper. Okay, good, very good.
Connect it here, the Amte the Rebbe, and in the previous version, it's also his maid. So
the maid,
she saw he
the same
mercy,
maid.
So she had mercy on him.
No, the maid was cleaning the house with the weasel. He tells her to stop. Then he goes to the bathroom, and she goes up to the roof. That's the order of events.
Something like that, yeah.
And it's just the Gemara. In one, it's Bava Metzia Pedal, and one is Ketubot Kuf Dalid. But they happened one right after the other.
And she's having mercy on him because he had mercy on the weasels or something like that.
Okay, I hadn't thought of that mahalach, but very good. What I wanted to suggest is less interesting than that, I think, which is that he was sick, and then he was healed, and then he got sick again at the end of his life. Not connected. Now, what's the problem? That the Yisurin he has here is related to the bathroom. And we saw in Bava Metzia that his Yisurin was that he always had to go to the bathroom. So how can you say that it's... So, good. So you would say that this... So my argument is that this is aligning with the version in Bereshit Rabbah. It says his original illness was a toothache, and now at the end of his life, he got the kidney stones. And not like Bava Metzia. But another way is to try to combine it, like you said. It's less nice.
This is like a
okay, good. Let's continue. The Yerushalmi Ketubot says as follows: Tziporaya Amarin. The Tzipori said, "Man de Amar lan lemit Rabbi Anan Katlin le." Whoever says Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi is dying, we will kill. Okay, it's a slightly different version of the Gemara Ketubot. Adik lahon bar kapara. Bar kapara went to check on him. His head was covered, his clothes were all torn. Amar lo, and he said to them, Yitzukin ve'erlin tfasun baluchot. V'gavrei adan sherelin v'chatfu et haluchot. So instead of the aron, it's the luchot here. The same idea. Amrulei demach Rabbi. So you're saying Rabbi died. Amarlon atun amriton. You said it, not me. Okay. V'karon. And then all the Rebbeim tore their clothes. V'azil kala lekariu legav piteta mahalach tlata milin. And the voice of their wailing at the fact that Rebbe had passed away carried all the way to a distance of 3 mil.
Like the,
Okay? What?
like the cattle earlier.
Right, like the cattle, right? In Bava Metzia. So what's the idea? You say the idea for me now. What's the idea? That his suffering was represented, his affliction was represented by a pain that the voice was carrying 3 mil, right? And then in his death, right, when his afflictions end, so also the voices carry a distance of 3 mil, right? But they're in total. One's in the Yushalmi and one's in the Bavli, and one is talking about the suffering, one's talking about the wailing, but they both use the same idea of 3 mil. Okay, so we can draw the connection there. Then it continues here. Rabbi Havayativ lebetzipor and Shivan Asar Shnin. Okay, so actually, I thought this was very funny. What I'm about to read. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, he was in Tzipori for 17 years. So Kral Garmei Vaychi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim Shvas Shana. Vaychi Yehuda betzipori Shvas Shnin. So his name was Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. So he said, it says that Yaakov Avinu, he lived in Mitzrayim for 17 years. So, Yehuda HaNasi lived in Tzipori for 17 years. I don't know. It's like a drasha that he did on himself.
Where did he live? Where was he
Before
before?
then? Somewhere else. But he was in Tzipori for the last 17 years of his life. Yeah.
Wasn't he Sanhedrin and Bet Mikdash?
He was after that.
After.
Yeah, he was after that, I think. But for 13 of those 17 years, so this now we can tie to what you guys were saying. For 13 of those 17 years, he had a toothache. So maybe this supports what you said, because you can say, if he was in Tzipori for 17 years and he died there, and for 13 of the 17 he had a toothache, so it makes sense. You just say that it was the last 13 of the 17, and then it aligns perfectly with what you were saying. Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Bun, Kol otan 13 shana lo meta chaya be'eretz Yisrael v'lo ipila ubara be'eretz Yisrael. Okay, there was no one died in childbirth, there was no miscarriage. V'lama chashesh shinoi, why did his teeth hurt? Chad zman hava avar, one time he was walking, Chama chad egal mitkenes, he saw a calf that was getting taken to be shechted. Ga'av amrale Rabbi Shezvi. So see here, the calf bellowed and said, "Save me," which is the version in Bereshit Rabbah. Amrale, what did he say to the calf? L'chach Nocert, which is the version in Bava Metzia. Okay? Uvasof heichi in shimat. So how did he recover? Chamton in katlun chada kan de achbarin. So he saw there was some group of people that were, getting rid of some rats. Amarlon, arpunon, leave them alone. V'achamav kol masav k'tiv. Okay, so instead of the daughter and the juke, or the maidservant and the weasel, it's some group of people and the rat. But the idea is the same. That is v'achamav kol masav. What I wanted to suggest here before was the following idea. Let's do the last source and then I'll suggest it. Okay, and then in Eicha Rabbah. In Perek Dalet, it says as follows. It's commenting on the pasuk Ruach Hapeinu Mashiach Hashem. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi havu yoshvin uposhtin b'megilot kinot erev Tisha B'av shechal liot b'Shabbat im chashecha. So it was Shabbat, where Tisha B'av was on Sunday, and it was towards nightfall, and so Rabbi and Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, they were learning kinot, like they were preparing for Tisha B'av at the end. And this is in the context, the halacha is if this happens, you're only allowed to do that mina mincha or lamala, like as it gets close to the end of the day. Because you're not supposed to be sad on Shabbat, okay? Shairu ba alpha beta achat. Right? The Eicha is written Aleph Bet, and there's 5 prakim, so the last one of the Aleph Bet was left for them, because the last parak's not an Aleph Bet, right? The first 4 are. So one of the Aleph Bets were left. Amru, they said, Ani yotzim v'gomrim tal machar. Okay, so whatever. It's already time for Tisha B'av, so we're gonna stop, and we'll finish it tomorrow. Ukshala Rabbi leveto, and then Rabbi went back to his house. Nichshal betzba'o, and whatever, he was opening the door, whatever, and he sprained his finger. He hurt his finger. Amar al atzmo, so he hurt his finger, and he said, Rabim machovim la rasha. Many are the pains of the wicked. Amar lo Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi. So he said, Ilo haynu oskin b'inyan hazeh v'yigiya achar kach hayiti omer, achshav al chad kama v'chama, ruach hapeinu Mashiach Hashem. Which basically is him saying, don't be ridiculous, okay? It's not, you're not a Rasha, and the reason this happened to you is because you're tzaddik and you're atoning for the sins of the generation. That's what the Mefarshim understand that to mean. So what I want to kind of conclude is to say the following. What happened to Rebbe here? What did he hurt?
Finger.
Right, what does that remind us of? Right, at the end of his life, he goes like this, and he says, I testify that I never benefited even from my little finger. Right? So what I want to argue is the following. This is already kind of a bit of a stretch, I'll say. But we said before that Sipori is about 30 kilometers from the Kinneret. Right? And the Gemara Bava Metzia said that the animals were bellowing and it carried 3 mil, and his voice overpowered theirs and it carried 30 mil, which is around 10 times as far. Okay? And we also saw that 3 mil in the Gemara and the Yerushalmi is how far the voice of the Chachamim carried when they were mourning his passing. And why were they mourning his passing? Because no longer was there atonement for the generation, because he was atoning for the midwives and the women who were giving birth, that they wouldn't die anymore. So the rabbis were wailing that now the women would miscarry and they would have pain in childbirth again. And that atonement had gone away. So when Rebbe holds up his hands when he's about to die and he says, I didn't benefit even from my little finger, so he's saying in effect that when I was in pain, that the nechama that I brought to the world through my atonement was like 3 mil of nechama. Right? Because when they cried out 3 mils distance, to represent that was the atonement that he was able to achieve. But when he cried out in pain, it went 10 times as far. It went 30 kilometers, right? To the Kinneret. And so he's saying that why one finger I didn't even benefit from, like even my one finger that was nichshal be'etzba'o here in Eicha, Rabbah, and then Rabbi Yishmael Bar says to him, your finger is for atonement for the generation. So that's the 3 mil, the finger. He holds up all 10 fingers and he says, I had 10 times that amount of pain in my life because my voice carried 3 mil times 10, which is 30 mil to the Kinneret. And so it's true that my suffering brought atonement for the generation, but I suffered 10 times as much.
And there should be shalom in the olam with my menucha.
Achdut.
Meaning the benefits that the Yidden are having shouldn't go away.
That there should continue to be atonement.
Yeah.
And that it should, and I should also have peace, and it should be atonement, because only 1/10 of my suffering was allocated atonement-wise.
Right.
1 finger out of 10. Yeah. So this is just connecting phrases or words from totally all over the place and trying to kind of...
It's interesting that you're showing me how it has both stories together like this. But, yeah. It's just a funny thing that when he finally has Rahmanas on a living creature, as a reward, people start feeling pain again. You know what I mean?
Meaning
Anyway.
he dies, you're saying?
Yeah.
No, anyway. Doesn't matter if he dies or no. Let's say 13 years.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, if he was alive, anyway, then 14th
But he was
year
suffering,
anyway.
they had those benefits.
Right.
But he suffered for everybody
So
else,
now
so
that
it
he
makes
was
sense.
Rahmanas
But he suffered
on a
for everybody
bug,
else.
Yeah, but it was a side effect.
People
He
were-
suffered because of what he did. Because he was suffering, no one else didn't have pain.
You
Right.
didn't need to carry the burden anymore.
Getting Jesus vibes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Meaning the mathematics of how this concept works is just very
That's only a problem if you say like you, which is that the 13 years, that the day he died is the day with the weasel.
No, because in other sources it mentions just for those 13 years that he was suffering, the Jews didn't have that.
Oh, that's true, right.
So Kobe pointed out. Yeah,
But it doesn't mean that when he died they started suffering again. That's only true if when he died is when 13 years were
when
up.
he stopped suffering.
When he stopped suffering,
They started suffering.
right. Because his suffering atoned for them. When he suffered, it was in lieu of them suffering.
It's such a strange concept for me.
Yeah, no.
It's hard to wrap my head around. Like,
So
that's a
that all,
good thing. That
It's
came back to
Tzaddik
the-
and Miyasrin
No,
and
like,
Bonavador.
I don't know.
We've touched on it, I think, in previous shiurim as well, this idea. We've also alluded to what Shimon said. Yeah, it's a concept that deserves more Ian. We'll put it that way. But
Very interesting. All right.
Shkoyach.